Davey Boy Smith fan,
my
aren't
man.
you?
Honestly,
Is he better than Dynamite?
Yeah.
No, behave yourself.
9, 10, 11 years old watching Davey Boy Smith on TV was captivating.
He was, and then I did a few shows where he was wrestling as well.
Oh wow, cool.
When he came over for Max Crabtree in '94, and Johnny Angel, our friend Johnny Angel, he was in the tag match with that. So and the guy was huge. The guy was absolutely massive. Yeah. And then very strangely, all the other wrestlers on the bill, these British guys that were all very skinny, all started getting bigger as well.
Oh, man, what a coincidence.
I wonder why that was.
Yeah. I got a funny
what
story
a coincidence.
about those shows. I went to go see a British wrestling show in the Alton Sports Centre, and it had like an underfaker. So, like me and my friends went, and I was kind of like the educated 8-year-old wrestling fan. And we went there, we met The Undertaker in the ring, and all the lads were so excited. Like, we just met The Undertaker, but I kind of knew it wasn't. And then, not so long, maybe a year and a half or so later, there was an advert in the Petersville Post. But British Bulldog comes to Alton Sports Centre, so it's the same venue. And my mum, I sort of showed my mum and my dad. And I said, but we're not going to go because it won't be the real one. So I really missed out, didn't I? Because apparently
you did. It was him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely him. Yeah, and I remember. God, I mean, I was wrestling at this point, but I mean, God, I was still a huge fan. And I remember travelling back, and we did a show at Skegness, and we stopped off at a little pub on the way back. And just sitting there and saying nothing in complete awe of being sat with this gigantic fella. I mean, he was so big, especially at this point, because obviously he was in the UK and he wasn't being tested or anything. He was absolutely massive. Giant, and he had such cool gear, and he stood out so much above the British guys. He had this really nicely made gear and all the tassels and everything. It was well cool back in those days, but that was like 21 years ago.
Yeah, but I bet all the British wrestlers were still complaining at the time why they were taken off TV. And
of course they were.
But like compared to what the WWF were pumping out, in the early 90s, in terms of presentation, in terms of wrestling gear, to compare. In terms of presence and everything else, cause,
absolutely.
So
they were, they absolutely were. They were waiting to go back on it. I think some of them still are, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
I think some of them still are waiting for the call to go back on. Mm-hmm. And that's with respect to these guys, because it's not all of them that think that, but I think there are a few that still think that the name's going to draw a big crowd because they used to be on TV 26 years ago.
That's it. Well, I heard something the other day. Someone was telling me, saying in the late 90s. Because WWF was going through such a boom, ITV wanted wrestling back. That's what one of the old schoolers.
Oh, okay.
Well, obviously probably untrue, but nevertheless.
Nothing is untrue in wrestling. Everything is always true, and it's straight down the middle as it is.
Yeah, I know. I agree, definitely.
Okay, wonderful. So, big British Bulldog fan. Did you know any British wrestlers?
I went to see a show in Midhurst at the Grange. And it was after SummerSlam, so it was Steve Gray against who I now know was Sid Cooper. And that's a fairly famous show if you're in those circles, because Steve Gray and Sid Cooper was the only match that was on. And it was promoted by John Fremantle. And basically, it kept going and going and going. And John was announcing, telling everyone how... the other wrestlers will be here soon, And eventually, Steve Gray and Sid Cooper went on for so long, he cancelled the show. He was like, they're not turning up. So I told this story to Justin Starr, and Justin said, oh, God, I know that story. He said, that was supposed to be Scott Conway. Scott Conway with a couple of other wrestlers was supposed to be on their way, and John had managed to upset Scott somehow, probably over, price of petrol or something, and they turned around and went home. And I said within certain circles that's quite a famous story, and I was there.
So a one-match show.
It was
literally a one-match show.
Yep.
Yeah, but Sid Cooper was awesome. Sid Cooper was like the best heel. He was about 78 when I worked with him,
right.
And he was still awesome.
I can imagine he was. But as to an 8-year-old me, I didn't understand it.
No, of course, exactly. No, you don't. And and the same story is. I mean, you might think this to when you started, but. When I started 10 years before you, so it was a lot of the World of Sport guys that I was wrestling, and I did not appreciate it at all.
No.
And I had no idea half the time when I was wrestling Barry Douglas, the stuff this guy had done, or some of the other, World of Sport names that I wrestled. I did not appreciate it at all, and I wish I could go back now and be more respectful towards them, because I was just a cocky little kid, you know.
Yeah, can imagine.
Was there anybody when you started? Who was the first person you wrestled where you'd heard of them?
So I started in 2001. I met Scott Conway about 18 months later, and I kind of knew Scott from Mark Sloan telling us about other promoters, because as far as I was concerned, FWA was the only thing that mattered. You know, I was like, right, I'm FWA, and that's it, and I won't need to wrestle anywhere else. But Mark introduced us to Scott, and then Scott started using myself, Raj Ghosh, and James Ty, and that's where I met Robbie Brookside, and I knew Robbie Brookside. To be honest, I hadn't obviously seen World of Sport, but I must have seen him already, his name somewhere. So I reckon it's probably Robbie, and then we used to travel in the minibus with Robbie, and he used to kind of tell us all kinds of different stories and stuff, and that's when I had a much more wide-open appreciation for everything else in wrestling, you know, how FWA wasn't, at the time, the be-all and end-all. You know, there was other things out there that you should be concentrating on.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously you did enter the FWA, though, and for a time you were literally the guy on the show, the most over guy on the show. I think some of it was to do with the tremendous gimmick, no offence. You had a good gimmick at the time. Of course, you was a butler.
Yes.
You know, a downtrodden butler, which I never thought you really fancied doing.
I hated it. I hate it, but I knew how to play the game. A lot of the wrestlers nowadays, it aggravates me. They don't know how to play the game and please these promoters. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm a bit old-fashioned, but Alex Shane came to me and he said to me, listen, we want you to do this gimmick and, you know, you'll be with the Duke of Danger. And at the time, they'd just done Revival that was on Bravo, which obviously blew my mind. And Alex was like, yeah, we've got another special on Bravo coming up, which we might have suggested there was going to. I don't want to say he said there was going to be, but he put it over as if it was going to be a big deal. So I was like, yep, whatever you want. You know, if you want me to go out there dressed as, you know, my waistcoat and bow tie, I'll do whatever you need. Just because I wanted to get ahead and do something, you know, because I always maintain if I didn't do that gimmick, if Alex didn't give that gimmick to me, I wouldn't have gone anywhere. You know, I'm not saying I'd travel, you know, the world.
No, I know what you mean.
You know, I wouldn't have gone anywhere.
You've consistently been working for 15 years, no, absolutely.
And I put that down to that gimmick. It certainly gave me a bit of a boost anyway.
Now, what was that like? Because obviously FWA at the time was very popular with a select audience of probably about 500 people. It seemed to be a lot bigger than it was, I think. But you did have that crowd that knew you and followed the storylines and everything. And I remember you did a double turn on one of them where you looked like you'd gone to, oh God, who would it have been?
Family,
The Family, that's it. And then you did a double turn. I remember the crowd reactions for you were just tremendous.
Yeah, that all started totally by accident again. We were doing a show in, I think it was before FWA really took off. We were doing a show in Broxbourne. It had like Jerry Lynn. Oh no, maybe it was a couple of months after the Uprising. So maybe they were starting to get a good buzz. And we did a show, and essentially we were the six-man filler match because it was a round-robin tournament. So they needed a match to break up the matches. So we were in a six-man tag. It was myself, Chris Justice, Mark Sloan, Raj Ghosh, Paul Travell, maybe? I don't know. There's 6 of us anyway, and it was bloody awful. You know, like I was still green as grass. I'd been wrestling not long at all. And this match went on for, I reckon, keep in mind, this is a six-man tag filler match. It went 30 minutes. And I think, and I just think the crowd kind of got restless and bored, and I don't blame them. And in the end, they thought it was rather amusing to start cheering for me. So and then what topped it all off, my big finish was the Buff Blockbuster. And I went to go do that, and I literally just stacked it, fell on my arse, like didn't do the rotational flip at all, just fell off the ropes. And I think that was it. Ever since then, everyone got behind it, and I can't explain why, but it was all kind of, I guess, a hint of irony. But it was good fun anyway, and I appreciate it. So
it was an over gimmick, like you said. But I know you always hated it and would rather be Andy Boy Simmonz at any point, wouldn't you?
Yeah, because I like, again, FWA. I think what FWA really lacked at the time was bodies. You know, they like, you look at that roster, and God bless them, Jack Xavier, Paul Travell, people like that. Like then
Stevie Knight.
Well, Stevie Knight had a body at one time, didn't he? So,
he did at one point. Yeah.
Even Mark, Mark Sloan, Alex, like they all just lacked that sort of
a physique.
Yeah. That's the word. Yeah. And I trained a lot, and I wanted to show it off and say like FWA isn't just a bunch of guys in their kick pads and shorts and skaggy t-shirts, but they kept you wrapped up. In actual fact, Darren Walsh approached me at one of the shows and he said, "Cool, why are they keeping everyone out there with their pigeon chests and they keep you wrapped up in that? I don't understand it." So I was like, oh, cheers. You know, I was quite chuffed for that. So.
But you were quite skinny when you started, wasn't you?
I was, yeah, very skinny.
Are you still now? Are you still dedicated to gymming it and things?
I have to be. I think if I didn't, I'd probably be dead. So.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I've never kind of gone too public with this, but I was born with a condition called cystic fibrosis, where you're sort of, it's hard to kind of explain that. It's sounding a bit, lack of a better term, a bit gross. You kind of produce, you lack a certain protein. I think I've got this right. It sounds horrendous. I don't know for sure. You sort of lack a certain protein, and your body produces this mucus that sticks on your lungs. So, you know, a lot of people get seriously ill for this. And actually, I wasn't diagnosed until I was 13, but you're born with this. So I spent the first 13 years of my life just being horrendously ill. I was like the ill kid in class, couldn't put on weight. I played sports to a degree, but nothing like, you know, like the other lads. I was on like the hockey team instead of the football team, you know, because nobody knew what was wrong with me. All I knew was I was seriously ill. And when I was when I first entered wrestling, when I was 16, I realised I kind of have to start training now because I need to look the part, or at least do my best. And without knowing it, I'm really sure training has saved my life, because obviously when you're in the gym, your lungs are pumping, you know, you have to go, when I was a kid, I had to go through very serious physiotherapy to clear all this mucus off my chest, but going to the gym, that kind of does it for me now. So, you know, just through pure luck, I think, and finding a good program, I've actually been able to kind of maintain a decent, healthy lifestyle. So that all comes from wrestling.
Oh, fascinating. Well, so this is not common knowledge, then?
It isn't common knowledge. No. I've kind of kept the FWA tried to do an angle around it once about 10, 11 years ago, but I've never once gone public with it. Every time it popped up on a Wikipedia page, I'd delete it. Not because I was like embarrassed about it or anything. I always sort of feared it would kind of hold me back in some way. You know, I kind of thought, oh well, if WWE or TNA get wind of that, they're not going to want to touch me. You know, I'd try and keep it under wraps the best I could, but. You know, it's a pretty serious condition. As I said, I don't want to keep going on about it, but you know, people die from this regularly. And when I was diagnosed, the life expectancy was 30 years old, and I was already I was 13. So I'm thinking, God, I'm halfway through my life. I need to do something to put myself, or at least try and put myself right. And
that's a condition you'll have for life, is it?
It is, yeah. I'll have that for life. Yeah, it's all kind of genetics, all my mum and dad's fault. So, it comes from them. Yeah.
Do you want me to go around and bash them up?
Oh, I do it all the time.
Well, that's quite incredible then, that you've gone into wrestling and, like you say, trained and got yourself a physique and things, and probably good that you did.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. I can remember being at school, I'd sit in a classroom and I'd just be shivering cold because I probably had constant chest infections. And I never really understood why, and my mum was taking me to the doctors, no one had any answers. And I never went public with it because I wasn't embarrassed by it, but I just kind of didn't feel it was anyone else's business. But wrestlers, all my friends, are always telling me, you know, you could be a good story. And I don't say this to big myself up because I'm not that kind of person. I just say it like, and the reason why I'm coming maybe a bit more public with it now is if there are kids out there who aren't well, you know, I want to encourage them, inspire them. You know, does that sound a bit pretentious?
No, not at all.
I'm trying not to be. I'm really not. I'm just sort of throwing it out there that, you know, if you train, you know, if you do what you need to do and stay healthy, you can accomplish far more than I did. So.
Well, I'm sure if they'd have told you, if you told your doctors that you was going to become a wrestler with having this condition, they'd have probably said you was a bit daft and probably not to do it, I would think.
But they did numerous times, because I was adamant since the age of 8 I was going to be a wrestler. And, you know, when I was diagnosed when I was 13, I met this whole medical team, and they said, you know what, you're just chatting. And they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I either want to be a fireman or a wrestler. But really, I didn't really want to be a fireman, because I thought, I've got to give them something possible, plausible.
Something normal.
Yeah, normal. And
it's probably easier now. It's probably easier now to be a wrestler than it is a fireman.
I think it probably is. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were like, yeah, good idea there, young man. Probably thinking, I might not be around all that much longer. And that's kind of the reality, you know. That again, this isn't me trying to put myself over. I'm trying not to. I'm really not.
The evidence is you haven't. You know, it's the first time you've mentioned it since, you know. And like you say, wrestlers tend to get every bit of publicity they can for, you know, whether you're a doctor and then you get some publicity for being a doctor on the side, and, you know, I'm not knocking that at all. Great, because you get anything to get some publicity. So yeah, I think you've that's quite nice. It's made me I admire you more, and well, it's made me admire you now because I didn't admire you at all. So.
Thank you. Because I was knocking on your door coming on this podcast. Please.
There you go. That's what it is. Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm getting every scrag end I can get at the minute. So. No, I jest.